Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
This is Season 1, Episode 13 of Hockey Talk on Wisp Sports. I'm Shannon Miller, and at Wisp Sports, we believe women in sport deserve equal coverage. Hockey Talk is presented by Instack, a video product that is used by professional teams around the world. In today's episode, I will talk about forechecking systems and using the forecheck in different game situations, as the forecheck is an important piece of defensive team play. My guest this week is Rebecca Carlson, an NCAA coach of 12 years in women's rugby, which is an NCAA emerging sport. Becky's a 3-time consecutive national championship coach and a former Division I dual sport NCAA athlete. Becky Carlson is a champion for equality and a voice for women in coaching. She is the creator of the online social media mentorship and support for female coaches called The Fearless Coach. Today's sidebar will be about women and vision. And this week's drill of the week will be some full ice and half ice forechecking drills. The drill of the week will be posted on my Facebook page at Coach Shannon Miller on Thursdays. Thank you for joining me. I'm honored to have my own hockey podcast show on Wisp Sports and to be part of the most popular and influential podcast organization for women in sports globally. Today's podcast is titled Forecheck and the Fearless Coach. Now, today I'm going to talk about the forecheck called the trap. I have had a lot of questions, people asking me, what's the difference between a 1-2-2 forecheck and the trap? So the simple answer to that is the trap is a 1-2-2 forecheck, but it's higher in the zone, higher on the ice. You don't go as deep into your opponent's zone, so it's up higher. When I use the term higher, that's what I mean. You don't go as deep into the zone on the forecheck. So it's a 1-2-2, but it's higher. So just try to imagine F1 is the first player into the zone, and she's got F2 and F3 behind her, and then D1 and D2 in behind F2 and F3. So there's some width and some depth to this forecheck. The defensemen are inside the dots. F2 and F3 kind of depends on where the opponent is with the puck, but they're typically above the blue line or just inside that offensive blue line. So F1 goes in, and they patiently set up in a 1-2-2, and they wait. And you let the opponent's defenseman make the first move. Once they make that first move, whether it's a pass or they start skating the puck for the breakout, F1 now steers aggressively, feet moving, stick in the cutback lane so they can't cut back on you, and you're trying to steer the puck carrier up the wall so that F2, who's above and behind F1, can jump on that pass to the outlet player or the higher player or help trap if that defenseman skates the puck up the wall. So F1 steers, F2 and F3 are above, and the defensemen are in behind inside the dots. And that's the setup for the trap. You make the opponent make the first move, and then everybody adjusts. F1 steers, F2's above and steps down to trap, and F1 continues underneath, so there's pressure underneath and pressure from on top, and F3 simply comes through and locks the middle. The D are in the neutral zone and in between the dots, so they're safe defensively. Now, if F1 goes in and commits, and she's steering, and she's got her stick in the cutback lane, but they happen to beat her and go D to D across the ice, or just make a cross-ice pass, it's very simple. Now, F3, who's on that far side, now on the strong side where the puck is, F3 now takes an inside-out angle, and she's going to try and steer that defenseman or puck carrier up the wall, whether to skate it up the wall or pass it up the wall. So F3 now becomes F1. So F3 comes in and feet moving, stick in the cutback lane, tries to steer up the wall, and D2 steps. Okay, D2 steps down to help trap. So again, you have pressure from underneath, that's F3 underneath, and you have D2 stepping down on the wall to help trap. F2 slides in behind to cover for D2, who stepped up to trap. So F2 comes across hard through the middle and supports in behind D2, who's now pinching. F1 keeps her feet moving, and she comes back through the middle, leading with her stick. So the trap is like a 1-2-2, It's just higher, and you allow your opponent to make the first move, and then you're trying to trap them on the wall, whether they're skating the puck or passing the puck up the wall. You steer them to the wall, and you try to trap them on the wall. Now, and the defensemen, like I said, are in behind for good position and safe defensively. Now, when we dump and change, when your team dumps and changes, always trap coming off the bench. If you dump and change and the opponent already has possession, they're starting to come up the ice, you want to immediately go into a trap coming off the bench. It protects the middle of the ice, it forces the opponent to the outside, and you're organized and together coming off the bench. So it's a discipline forecheck. It's a read forecheck. It requires discipline, and it can be effective, especially on big ice. Now, as far as dumping and changing, I do get a lot of questions on should one forward, especially a winger, stay out on the ice to forecheck. Yes, so there's different scenarios in the game. If you're in a situation where you guys dump the puck and you need to change, I typically will ask one winger, the far side winger, to stay out on the ice and sacrifice herself to steer the opponent up the wall towards our bench. So she goes out and takes an outside in angle, not inside out, like I talked about earlier, but an outside in angle. And she's trying to steer the opponent to break out up the wall on the far side closest to our bench. So she keeps her feet moving, tries to pressure them up that wall so that it's very easy for her to come off and change because she sacrificed herself by staying on to forecheck. This allows the other 4 players on her line to go out, change, and get fresh legs on the ice. So now that far side winger, I'll call her F1, is steering outside in, trying to force the opponent up the wall on our bench side, your bench. Get 4 sets of fresh legs out on the ice, and now it's very simple for her to change. She just follows through. She's forechecking, back checking. It's very easy for her to come off, and then that 5th player come off the bench with fresh legs. So hopefully that answers a lot of people's questions on the difference between a 1-2-2 forecheck as well as the trap, as well as what kind of forecheck system should you use when you're coming off the bench. Those are 2 different game situations. One, you would have someone stay on and pressure, and the other one would be all 5 of you would just go into a trap. Today's sidebar, with where we are at in the women's movement, I believe we are just getting started. For all of us, having a vision is important. Vision is the ability to see beyond our present reality, to create, to invent what does not yet exist, to become who we not yet are. My guest today, Rebecca Carlson, is one of those women on the front lines, fighting for women, fighting for female coaches, and doing her best to create a better reality for all of us. Becky has 12 years experience as an NCAA Rugby coach, winning 3 consecutive national championships, and was a Division I dual sport athlete herself. Becky is a champion for equality, a voice for women in coaching, and the creator of The Fearless Coach, an online vehicle for mentorship and support of female coaches. Becky, I'd like to begin with a couple questions specifically about The Fearless Coach. What is the platform of The Fearless Coach, and how did this all come about?
Thanks for having me on, Shannon. The Fearless Coach is an interesting concept that came about. As you've said, I've been a college coach for the last 12 years, and I've seen many things change in that time. And during my tenure, after one of my most successful seasons, which was my very first national championship, I became aware on campus of abuse of athletes on another team. And I attempted to blow the whistle on that. And that ongoing abuse based on the athletes' testimonies had been happening for a few years. And I went to the higher ups, and it was made clear that that was something that was to remain internal. So at the same time, my team was also actively vocalizing their disagreement with our former university's president's dismissal of our program's national championship and some other issues of inequality in treatment. So needless to say, it put a big target on my back, and I figured it was only a matter of time before I'd be under some kind of scrutiny. So a few key athletic department members who were involved in keeping the athlete abuse quiet were active in pursuit of any unhappy players in my program. And just like that, I was reprimanded, and I had a permanent letter placed in my file that I was abusive, that I was insensitive to mental health, which it was essentially the start of a paper trail. So I was called many things in that letter, manipulative and pushing a female agenda on my players. So it was devastating. It was all untrue. And I went to work for about the next 6 months, and I felt like I had the flu the second I stepped in the door. And I didn't coach like me. I was sugarcoating. I was completely turned upside down. I trusted no one in the department outside my assistant coach who got me through. And one day, I finally broke down and I went to get a physical because my body was shot. I was losing weight. I wasn't sleeping. And during that physical, I asked to speak to a counselor. And she said something to me that changed absolutely everything, that I think I should give her some credit for helping me start the Fearless Coach. Because she said, if you don't feel like you can speak out or coach as your authentic self, and that's creating so much turmoil, if you do lose your job, would you feel worse that you lost it playing to their standard, or could you breathe easier knowing you went out still holding on to your values and your true self? And in that moment, I decided she was right. I decided to be fearless, and I haven't looked back since. And I wasn't going to mute myself and let them win, and I wasn't going to give everything I had to my team, without recognition. I couldn't give everything I had to my team without taking care of me first. So I went into work the next day and I just flat out made a choice to stop worrying. And I began writing. I began writing articles on women in coaching and athlete entitlement, our lack of communication and recruiting, as a kind of therapy and a way to connect with other coaches who were struggling just like I was. And it was amazing because I won 2 more national championships after I made that decision. In the middle of all of that, I finished up creating Fearless Coach because there were countless coaches, mostly women, who went through scenarios similar to mine, but most had lost their job or were working in these oppressive departments, and they were just expressing so much hopelessness, and I wanted to help, and I still do. So this is why we talk about it.
Well, yes, and as you know, we're very much aligned, you and I, in our philosophies with regards to coaching, as well as, how athletes should be handled, as well as how you interact with administration, but staying true to your core values, your principal values as a coach, and what you believe you need to do to win and to do the right thing. And doing the right thing is always the hardest thing to do. So to you, what does it mean to be fearless as a coach, and how can coaches put this into action?
That's a fantastic question, Shannon. I think that a lot of these forums that we're looking at now that lead women are have a lot of helpful information, but there's not that many action items that we can pursue to try and change our worlds. And I think it's an interesting concept because it's so much easier said than done as a coach or a teacher today, or telling people how they need to be instead of showing them or providing them steps. And I don't think that's any different than telling an athlete to be confident or to have more confidence when they need opportunities to build that belief in themselves. And we have to provide that to our athletes the same way we should be practicing that as coaches. And this means examples like staff meetings and just everyday inter-office dialogue, participating in workshops, or doing something outside your comfort zone at your institution. I've talked to countless women, and I'm sure you're in this group as well, that just you feel isolated at your institution. And reaching out isn't something we like to do because we don't like to admit that we're struggling, or we don't feel anyone else is going through what we're going through. So that part of it, if you're that person that sits in those staff meetings or in those workshops, or you go to these seminars to try to be better, and you're just a bystander, and you have thoughts and feelings and actions that you want to share, and you're not. It's the same things that we get frustrated with our athletes when we pose a question to them and it's silent because everyone's afraid of that judgment. I think we need to give ourselves more opportunities to demonstrate and stretch our fearless legs. And I don't think we do that enough as women. And I started doing that in staff meetings. I would hear something and I would directly ask a question, and it still shocks people, I think. And I have many people come up to me going, I was thinking the exact same thing. I just didn't say it. Well, it's, that's where we are the people that are raising the other ships to be able to address those questions and to raise our hands and to be part of solutions rather than retreating back to our offices and having our own private caucuses about what we think needs to change, because that's just not getting it done.
Well, exactly. And Becky, you're familiar with the lawsuit. Myself, the
Yes.
softball coach, Jen Banford, and the basketball coach, Annette Wiles, all from the University of Minnesota, Duluth. I've had my own federal trial by myself, which I won convincingly, quite easily, and now the state trial, things are in front of us. You are familiar with our case, and the things that you're mentioning are the things that we all were feeling as well. Jen and I were talking because we were partners, and we are partners, but we were not talking to Annette Wiles, and everyone was isolated and dealing with these issues on their own, including the track and field coach as well. And then when I stood up and said, I'm going to sue the university for the dismissal, the firing of myself and Jen Banford, said the same thing. And we started talking openly about how we were being treated and things that have been going on for years. That's when the basketball coach was like, oh my God, they were treating you like that, Shannon Miller. You've won 5 national championships. You're a Division I coach. They were treating me like that too, but I didn't want to come and talk to you because I'm a Division II coach, and there's no way I thought you were being treated like that as an openly gay woman. And she said that to me, and she said, I wished I would have come and talked to you years earlier, but it literally took me going forward and public for her to have the confidence to come and talk to me, and for her also to put that foot forward and go public and sue them as well. And so what we all have learned through that process is that many of us have gone through it, are going through it, and we really do need to be there to support each other, to talk openly about it, and do whatever it takes to help each other navigate through it, and also give others the courage to stand up and do the same.
Right. I couldn't agree more with that concept. I think it's that initial, I think if I could compare it to anything, and not the strongest comparison, but it's like women in athletics today and suffering in our own circles is a little bit like a bad night of karaoke where you just think you could never get up and do it until you see somebody else do it. And so it's like we just need to come to terms with the fact that, it's okay to share that we're struggling, and that we all may have something in common about where that source of struggle is coming from, be that a specific person, be that a policy or a standard that's just been shaped or placed in the way of our progress. And when we really start to have that dialogue and come together, as you did with Jen and Annette, I think that's huge. But again, it's the same reason that I write, because I know that each like that I get on these articles, or even an engagement or a question, it's a risk. It's a big risk, and you know that, and you risked everything. You risked everything to go for some accountability, and that is, it's rare, and we can say that. I wish it wasn't as rare. I know you don't want to be the only one. You and Tracy Griesbaum and Beth Burns don't want to be alone. That is not your goal. Your goal is to inspire other people, but it's the ability of society to say, well, Shannon Miller is just disgruntled, and this is a one-off it's not a one-off. It's not a one-off that it happened. It's a one-off and a rare occasion that someone fights back. And I think that's the difference in all of this. And we want this to be more common, which is why we talk about these things.
Exactly. And by us suing collectively, the three of us, as well as people like yourself writing openly and mentoring these female coaches and helping them navigate through all of this, you and I are both learning there's more out there than we even knew. I mean, they are just coming out in droves, contacting you, contacting me, asking for help, asking for advice. And so I think what we do is incredibly important, but it's very important for those women to continue to come out and to speak up and to reach out, and we can all help each other. And that's definitely the direction we're going with the women's movement today.
Sure. Agreed.
So Becky's an author on issues in coaching and team culture development. Carlson's most notable piece is called An Open Letter to the Athlete We Must Stop Recruiting. This letter is currently one of the highest viewed articles in the business and networking platform LinkedIn. So Becky, you talk a lot in your writing about there being this shift or a recognition of leadership challenges that are occurring in athletics. Is this shift almost like a shot across the bow of what's to come? And how do we fix it?
I think it's so interesting, and it's alarming at what's happening right now. And I only know this because of, and you mentioned it already, the countless calls and emails that I field from coaches who are, they're burned out and do not feel supported in their respective departments. But I think this is bigger than burnout, Shannon. I think that we need to recognize, and I don't know if there's too many administrators or even coaches out here who have considered the repercussions of this shift. And we need to recognize that this generation, and this generation of coaches, by that I mean the head coaches of the ages 30 to 55 in the profession, we are the last buffer between the current administrators leading these departments and the student athletes. We are the troops on the battlefield listening to the issues of our athletes, and we are dealing with them firsthand. So the next generation of coaches is coming out of these current student athletes, many of whom have been catered to by the same administrations and sidestepped their coaches. Now, let's just all collectively think about this for a second. With this buffer of coaches just like you and me, being eliminated from athletics in a very specific, methodical, and often illegal way, as you found out, the athletes of today are tomorrow's coaches. So this is a generation of athletes where parents and society have provided them with a clear message that power is distributed evenly and everyone's view is important and no one is to be left out or denied in the process of creating and implementing standards and policy. Can you just imagine when the boots on the ground of our coaching generation, especially our women, have been eliminated in order to appease the system, what happens? How do we imagine that this current generation of administrators, how will they handle that want and that need from the next generation to eliminate the very clear and widening gap of these professional silos that many of our athletic departments are saturated in, and they really don't know how to reverse it? The old way, it just doesn't work. So the lack of collaboration and understanding of what coaches do at the bottom, because we're at the bottom, no matter how much we win, especially as women, we're at the bottom. It's completely foreign to those at the top. And even those at the top who are trying to understand still, I think, in a way, fear coach empowerment. It's fearful to them rather than exhilarating or exciting or hopeful. And I think we can help each other. But that means that the old school hierarchies that exist must vanish. We must listen. We have to sit around now in circles rather than putting the power up on the stage and demanding that everyone listen in silent staff meetings, because it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So I want anyone listening to this to think about this for just 1 minute. If we as coaches are being asked to adapt in our behaviors to reach this generation in order to be more effective leaders, how can we as coaches not demand that the same transformations and efforts within our departments be made so we aren't the only ones being asked to be so philosophically nimble? So think about that. It's a message that says we don't want to change to lead you as coaches, but you have to change as coaches to lead your athlete. It's complete conflict that dates back to the earliest and most cliche phrases, as if to say, do as I say and not as I do, which we all know as coaches is the quickest way for our athletes to lose confidence in us when we don't walk the walk. And Shannon, we're going to burn for it. We're going to burn for it. And if we don't change, and women coaches are the first casualties of this. And I know this because it's already happening now, and you know it.
Well, exactly. And your piece that you did on Pat Summit, would you mind just sharing that with our listeners? Because I thought it was incredible. And I know it was a while ago, but I keep referring back to it. And I use that when I'm talking to coaches that reach out to me. Would you just share that with everybody? Sure.
I think Pat there is nobody that is in sports can debate what kind of contribution that Pat Summit it gave to not only women's basketball, but women's sports, and just her effect that she had on people and her leadership. I think it was just this raw energy that was she meant business. And I think it's so interesting because Pat is just she's this beacon of what it meant to be this fantastic coach. And we revere her in these ways that I don't think we're revering some of our best female coaches right now for doing the same things essentially that she did, only they don't have, a generation of UT basketball tenure behind them. So what I meant in writing that was, listen, if we don't buckle down, we can talk about Pat and we can talk about the coaching greats, but if we don't buckle down right now and recognize where our gender bias exists and how we handle female coaches and their interactions with their players or their forms of motivation or their level of grit and exterior and toughness, where we're having to think about what our face looks like when we're speaking to a player because we don't look kind enough or we're not motherly enough. If we don't fix this right now, people saying, who's the next Pat Summit? We are not going to have the opportunity to see another one. And I think that one of the most powerful things in that article was that we may have missed her already. And because of this trend where women are eliminated out of coaching in these untalked about underground messes that are created by departments, I think this is where we're going wrong. And I think that the more we come out from behind these shadows to talk about our experiences, the sooner that we'll be able to accept that that women are okay being strong, and not just okay that they're thriving being strong, and that our female athletes need to see that. But we may never ever see another Pat Summitt in the way with the pattern of behaviors that we're seeing now in athletic departments, where you're supposed to nurture. And the same way that the male basketball coach or the male ice hockey coach or the male tennis coach gets into the space of their athletes and is firm or puts a standard in place, he's seen as tough, and he's seen as someone to look up to, and it really just has his whole coaching philosophy in line, and he's the man. But when women do that, it's frowned upon, it's seen as abusive, and I think that's why we're seeing a lot more of this surface where we don't understand the definition of tough coach, and we sure don't understand the definition of a tough female coach.
Oh yeah, you're dead on. The most reoccurring theme that I experience when I'm talking to these female coaches that have continually reach out to me for help is, as a female, when we are strict, we have high expectations, we hold people accountable, and we try to create a really strong team culture. We're mean, we're angry, we're whatever the adjectives you want to use. And when the male coaches do the same thing, they're strong. They're good disciplined coaches, disciplinarians, they're successful and they're revered. And so obviously I experienced that. You continue to experience that. So did Jen, so did Annette, and so many female coaches that are reaching out to me. And we've got to work hard, and we're going to have to fight back to create that change. And it's a fight.
It really is. And I think if you look at even just something that's more socially relevant in the moment, I think there was just a recent post that went out on social media that was exposing the men's basketball coach from Penn State, where it was just a small clip. And many people can say that, based on social media, when things are spliced in a certain way, that's up for interpretation. But I think this clip in particular of this scene where there was a timeout and the head coach of the men's basketball team went at his player and shoved him in the chest. And you see later that the athletic director there stated publicly that this was a mistake, and he was going to be suspended for one game, and that this was not characteristic of that coach. And I think it's very interesting how we take those stances on what it is that we're actually looking at, because if you go back and look at that clip, that type of behavior and the body language and the way that the players almost didn't react at all, that shows you that behavior is typical. That shows you that the behavior is quite common when the athletes don't pause for a moment. And in that moment, when one of the players was shoved, another player stepped in and almost looked like it was motivating to them to see their coach push another player that way, which was alarming to me. And the second part of that was more alarming was just the fact that even after the players got together, the coach was still glaring at that player. So it wasn't really about a lesson. It was more about anger in that moment. And for the athletic director to sugarcoat it in that way and not take that any plain person with a set of eyes could see. I can tell you how many women have been exposed on tape for pushing their players. 0. I can tell you how many women would keep their jobs after they did something like that, and the number is still 0. So
0.
I think that's that's so interesting about it too. But it doesn't mean because and often people will tell me, oh, well, that was wrong. Any woman or man doing it, that was wrong. Fine, I agree with that. But it's still a demonstration in a contrast of treatment following a behavior. And I think there's a lot of administrators out there that are hardwired to recognize that male aggression as something that is motivating, as something that is positive, as something that's making boys into men. When in reality, if anybody, again, talking about Pat Summitt, remember Pat Summitt's glare? The players talked repeatedly about the glare that Pat could give you. They didn't feel like they were in danger. They didn't feel like they were being abused, but they got the message. And one of the most interesting things too is, when I listen to major Division I coaches talk about their experiences, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult for me to connect. I always try and listen to what it is that the messages that they have. And I was recently listening to one where she was talking about how you behave as a coach. And saying, back then I didn't have to think about what my face looked like. And when I'm reprimanding a player or when I'm sharing something and I'm being passionate or intense, I have to think, coaches out there, you have to think, and women coaches, what does your face look like? And for me, I frowned upon that advice a little bit, because I don't know one male coach that I know personally that would say, I gosh, really got to worry about what my face looks like when I'm reprimanding a player. If we're not doing that for the men, why are you worried about it as a woman? And I think that's something that we need to work with our leaders of tomorrow and today to understand what coaching, what the definition of coaching actually is, and some of that, if we're not holding passionate, and I'm holding up air quotes, passionate male coaches to the same standard, as we would if we were reprimanding a woman for holding her player accountable, then this is where we're going wrong.
Excellent. Great conversation. One more, Becky. Outside of equality within athletics, your mission continues to be education in the area of supporting coaches and returning accountability and high standards to the responsibility of the student athletes. Can you elaborate on what kind of issues in leadership we are facing as coaches and what some of those repercussions will be and are, and tie that into the responsibility of the student athletes?
I sure can. I think that, this is going to have to be an understanding that there's a two-way street here. And I think that when we're in our departments, when we are reactive to issues and we're not versed in collecting facts, nor are we used to respecting our coaches in the same way as we would the testimonies of our athletes, I think that when that imbalance is being created, I think that we're losing that accountability, and we're in a society now of endless do-overs. And I say do-overs with all the love in my heart, because it's no different than the professor or the teacher that is becoming burned out because it's okay for someone to miss a paper or to not show up to a class just because, and those educators being without repercussions. And I think we've strayed away from standards, because whether that's litigious fear or parental pressure or a desire to maintain, an image with the public of that we're student oriented, I think that's a huge issue. So outside of equality, it's a huge part of my mission to educate parents and high school coaches and even college coaches about what conversations we need to have, because I don't want to be one of those people that resorts to calling this generation hopeless or just labeling them as we do all generations. I don't want to do that, because I do think they're capable and I do think they're relatively sharp. But my biggest message, I do this with my team each year, and if there is a particular label that they feel that is plaguing them, or they feel that they are being put into a box with what kind of behaviors their generation exhibits, you give them examples and ask them, okay, well, here's an example. Why are you not like this generation? Do you fit this or do you not? And tell me why. What kind of behaviors do you exhibit to not match what the stereotypes are about your generation? And what can you do to work against that if you truly believe that that is not who you are, and that you are ready to be accountable, you're ready to seek out ways to improve your levels of grit, and ways to meet those high standards rather than delivering excuses. So that's a big part of it too, because the great thing about what I want to do is, and you'll see this on social media, if there is an issue of athlete abuse or coach, there's a coach that was fired, I'm balanced. I know that not every coach is perfect, and I know that not every athlete is perfect. So we really need to come to terms with the fact that it's not an all or nothing in every single situation. And, that is a huge, huge part of the platform of how we teach coaches who are getting athletes at the college level who have had almost zero practice and training in the area of emotional resilience and, just self coping. And, that's a big part of it.
That's awesome. Becky, as expected, you're an excellent guest on the show. Would you like to share with our listeners how people can find you on social media if they want to interact with you?
Sure. You can, after you listen to this, hopefully you'll be a little bit inspired to throw me a message or to look at some of the helpful information that's on the website, which can be found at www.thefearlesscoach.org. And all of my information and contact, and there's actually a contact form on there, is available, so we can interact, and I will get back as soon as possible.
Conversations from the world of women's sports. This is Wisp Sports Radio.
Thank you to Becky Carlson. Follow and comment on social media. Twitter is at Wisp Sports. My Twitter is at Miller12Shannon. My Facebook and Instagram is at Coach Shannon Miller. My website is CoachShannonMiller.com. Check out the latest drills of the week that I post every Thursday. You can find links in the show notes for this episode at wispsports.com and find more coverage of women's sport. Thanks for supporting women in sport everywhere.